What's a little alien stir-fry between new bunkmates? Here on Feed Your Please, a heinous trip at Warp 5. My name is Joseph.
And I also shake my little tush on the catwalk. I'm your co-host, Peter. It's right said Fred too much of a... Did I lose people too much on that one?
I don't think so.
That's all I could think about during this episode.
Are you too sexy for your shirt? Are you so sexy it hurts?
I don't think we got to worry about any Zoomers listening to us. Review fucking Enterprise. And I don't think you're going to have to worry about any Zoomers listening to you on your other show.
No, definitely not. Unless you're quite a nerd. But if you are somebody that has an interest in American politics in particular, I do have another show that has been launched and has been around for a few weeks as of the recording of this particular podcast. As you may have picked up through hints through the years, my primary career and life path has been in U.S. politics one way or another. And I've always wanted to do a political show. I fortunately found a great co-host for that show, somebody I have great conversations with already, and we decided to start recording them. So it's called Replacement Level Morality. We strive to be a very historically literate podcast talking about political topics in context of both its place in the world as well as its place in history. And if that sort of thing interests you, some very real politic, hardcore, amoral analysis of world events and political events is, yeah, like I want that. Put it in my veins. Well, Replacement Level Morality, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts. You can find it anywhere where you listen to your shows, and we'd love to have you. And that is the only time you'll ever hear about it on this show, because this is not a political show.
Yes, here's what happened. If you go back to Skin of Evil, the civilization that transcended, they took all of their evil, black hate and whatnot, and they shed it off, and they left it behind as a black pool. It killed Tasha Yar.
It did.
That's Joe's political podcast. We've squeezed all the politics for 4 years out, and it has become Joe's other podcast, and where so many other Trek podcasts get political.
We endeavored to never do that here because we know we have a mixed audience, and we don't want to do that to you.
So Joe has made Skin of Evil, and it's called Replacement Level Morality. Before we get into it, speaking of nerd shit, I'm going to say, for the good of the audience, and what I really mean is myself, what the fuck is going on with Magic the Gathering and like Wall Street right now?
Oh my God. So glad you asked. You want to talk about something that has combined my interests. It is the stock market and investment finance and Magic the Gathering. If only this was caused by someone's political meltdown, it would have been the trifecta. A political meltdown related to Star Trek. Like, then it would just be like then the simulation has obviously gone haywire. And I'm seeing the code behind in the Matrix. So what happened is that Bank of America, which, like a lot of major financial institutions, rates stocks based on if they should or should not be purchased or held by people in their portfolios, took Hasbro, the parent company that owns Wizards of the Coast that produces Magic the Gathering, and reduced them from a buy rating to an underperforms, which is essentially you should probably think about selling the stock as soon as possible because at its current price, it's not worth that. Which is a big deal.
Did Hasbro buy Wizards of the Coast, or did Hasbro buy Magic from Wizards?
Yeah, they bought Wizards of the Coast. They did that back in like 2002. Like, it was almost 20 years ago that they bought them.
When did Hasbro get it from Garfield Games?
Well, Wizards of the Coast always owned Magic the Gathering. Garfield Games was just basically Richard Garfield's like personal like LLC for all the business he does. He never owned Magic personally. And so Dr. Garfield is long since removed from Magic actively for the most part. He does sometimes get hired as a hired gun developer, and those tend to be the better sets, by the way. Hasbro has really been trying to mine deep on Magic specifically for profit lately because their legacy business has fallen apart. I mean, they're used to selling pony toys to children. Like that's really where they're at. Their imprint for boys was Nerf. Like that's
Nerf is
where
doing well, it would seem, but not well enough.
these are the things they're used to selling. And they owned Wizards of the Coast, and it was profitable, but it's also like the piece of their business they always least understood. And you can kind of tell because they just let them do whatever they wanted. It's like, whatever, these weird nerds. Because it's a small C kind of conservative company. Anyway, the market started to notice that they've really been over trying to monetize Magic in a way that's driving the volume down, but raising the margins, which is never good. So they're making more money on less sales right now by what they're selling, but that means there's less people buying the product, right? And that becomes an accumulating problem because you have fewer and fewer whales that you can really take advantage of. And that pattern finally broke through into normie space. And some analyst at BOA was like running the numbers of behind their last quarterly report, which showed how far their volume of sales has dipped on Magic the Gathering, and that their margin that they've managed is basically, putting a Band-Aid over cancer. Like, you're not actually solving the problem.
I don't. So are they reprinting like old valuable cards to try and squeeze stuff out of it? Or are they making like cards that you can't play in normal games as like special collections?
They've done literally both of those things, Peter, and in ways that have boggled the mind. They started marketing agreements with other IPs. So there's literally Magic the Gathering Warhammer 40K cards. You can wrap your mind around that. And they also, for the 30th anniversary of the game, reprinted the beta set, but with different backs.
So they're not classified. What?
Yeah, so they're like, they got around their reserve list thing by putting them with like a special 30th anniversary back to them. But to buy these cards, it's 4 boosters for $1,000.
What?
Yes. These are the fucking crazy decisions they've been making. It's driving people away from buying new product. I haven't bought a significant amount of new product in probably a year. And I play regularly. I do not buy Magic the Gathering product from Wizards of the Coast. So that is something that has become an issue. So, man, you want to talk about, we're hitting everything. I got a politics podcast. We're talking about BOA stock ratings of a toy company that owns a card game.
Speaking of driving people away before we...
Oh, bro, I kind of like this episode. I think it was...
Of course you do. I'm talking about all your sweet spots. I was just curious, and it was very crazy for me to see Magic come up in any
on
sort of
CNBC or something. Like, what the fuck is this?
Well, based on your description, and I mean, I haven't touched Magic in a long time. Yeah, that is all the wrong fucking moves to make.
Yes.
Let's talk about some right moves. Let's talk about Season 2, Episode 12, The Catwalk. Joe, this is coming to us, popping off in December 18th, 2002 is the first air date. Written by Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong. There's 2 names I recognize, and I want to say those are Voyager names, right?
I do believe they are, primarily. Phyllis Strong did 4 episodes of Voyager. Body and Soul, which we liked. Prophecy, Author, Renaissance Man. So a lot of season...
Doctor Heavy stuff,
Season 7 stuff. And Mike Sussman did Meld, The Swarm, boo, The Haunting of Deck 12, that is with Shockey, the lost crew member.
Yes.
Unimatrix Zero, Body and Soul. Shattered, so that's a good one. Repentance, Prophecy, Author, Renaissance Man. So co-writes with Phyllis Strong
quite a bit.
Lot.
Yeah. Directed by Mike Veiger, who brought us many a Voyager episode. And this is exactly what I needed to see out of Enterprise to drag my interest level out of the fucking dumpster.
Yeah. It's definitely been a rough Season 2.
It's funny
really bad.
Vanishing Point, you had the episode before that, you had made it seem as though Vanishing Point was going to be good. And I think by the end of Vanishing Point, like, we both agreed that it was just the weakest possible entry of what that could have been. I think we should have named that episode Vanishing Promise or Vanishing Potential because of the failure to deliver. You weren't exactly glowing about this one at the end of our last episode, but
I barely remembered it, to be honest. I remembered that they were on the catwalk and they were stuck. That's really all I remembered about it.
And I think outside of any sort of Enterprise context, there's nothing especially great about this. This isn't, one of the best episodes of Star Trek I've ever seen, but this is certainly probably the best episode of Star Trek this season of Enterprise.
It's like a 16-year-old playing against 10-year-olds in basketball. It's not that he's necessarily good, but against what he's as competition, he's fucking Wilt Chamberlain. Just crushing.
So we're going to start this episode off in the shuttle bay, where I'm forced to ask myself a question, because this is a pretty good sweeping shot of the shuttle bay. And we see, I think it's Archer and Trip maybe, and they're walking up in the catwalks and going down into what we have often said is a really cool feature on these shuttles, and it's you enter in through a top hatch. But then it keeps panning down more, and it reminds you, there's side doors. And the doors are open both places, and I'm like, why in the fuck would you ever use the top load hatch?
It seems like so much more work.
On this shuttle pod, you can get down there, and there's just side doors open. They're getting in. And it's a really good look at the shuttle pod set piece prop as a whole. And you're like, 70% of this vehicle is movable door structure. That seems like a really bad design flaw for something.
What if those seals goes bad and you're in some real trouble?
3 separate, the shuttle pods are basically Honda Civic hatchbacks.
Very true. Actually,
3 doors.
They're just as roomy too.
Mm-hmm.
I will say overall, this episode also has maybe the best CGI we've seen out of Enterprise so far.
Holy shit.
It was markedly better.
Striking.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of the first episode. You were like, whatever, it's fine. This surpasses that easily. The detail that you get to see on the NX-01 as it just makes turns and over the course of the episode, it's like, damn, this is pretty. This is really good. This is high res.
To be fair, I saw the first episode of this right hot on the tails of us watching the last episode of Voyager. And at that point, that company knew what it was doing. They were familiar with the Voyager model, the design language, blah, 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 blah. It was a real balls out special effects superfest, right? The Borg and tubes and all that other shit. So them coming into a fresh property, it didn't really seem like that big of a deal. I'm sure if we went back and rewatched episode 1, Broken Bow, it would really stand out as great because the recent stuff's been so trashy. But yeah, normally I do my notes and stuff during the special effects exterior shots and shit because it's so lame. It was so good in this one that I was actually watching it fly around in the nebula and do cool shit. It especially looked cool flying dark against that well-lit, was it neutrino storm background?
Yeah, absolutely. Something about that combination just made everything pop. I don't know why.
So they're loading up the shuttlecraft because they found Planet Fun.
Yeah, they're gonna go down and they're gonna go to a super Grand Canyon where they're going to do whitewater rafting after they're done doing their science jobs.
Not only is this a really great M-class planet, it's also not surrounded by invisible landmines and slightly polite Romulan Centurion guards.
I mean, they've had such a rough time of it. Every planet they run into has got cancer-ridden people in Mr. Rogers sweaters that they're going to allow to die. They have hallucinogen drugs in the atmosphere, feature slugs that want to have sex with the captain for some reason.
Lightning storms so bad that it necessitates you to use transporters for the first time all season.
But this time, it's going to be a good time. And suddenly, there's a call from the bridge. There's an alien vessel that's actually asking to talk to Enterprise, a rarity. And Archer is like, holy shit, someone wants to talk. Put them right down in here. And that is when they are greeted by 3 dudes who are like, hey, there is a space bad weather storm coming this way. You need to get the fuck out of here. Can we come on board? You need to go to Warp 7 and outrun this thing as soon as possible. And they're like, our hoopty only go Warp 5. So, uh-oh.
Archer seems real self-conscious when he has to admit that they can only go warp 5. Yeah, these aliens are like, let us on. We got to talk immediately. And he's like, well, about what? And like, well, about the evil storm of death and destruction following us. Well, we don't see anything. Well, you will. We got to get out of here. You got to save us. Trust us. And the whole time this guy's talking, I want to say this is the first time we've ever seen an alien with a greasy ponytail.
Yes. That, by the way, is a TV thing. They don't let men with ponytails on television, or at least they didn't in this era.
Why?
So I don't know why, but there's somebody I knew from our LARP days that was an extra on an episode of The West Wing.
Okay.
And he was cast as an extra in an episode of The West Wing because he himself is Palestinian, and he was, there's not a lot of like Palestinian actors available in the DC area apparently. And he was able to be cast as a consequence of him looking the way that they were hoping to look. And he was able to keep he was told, like, you're going to have to shave that. You're going to have to that's not allowed on television. There's no ponytails.
But I'm a LARPer. We love our ponytails.
Exactly. But they let him keep it because he insisted, I'm not shaving it off. That's not happening. And eventually, well, fine. We need you bad enough. So he was the defense minister of Palestine or something. You had no lines. You're just in the background. You just, look stern. So yeah, I don't know why this one got through, but in this era, there were no ponytails.
So there's the leader guy, which is ponytail, but then one of his backup dudes, instantly, I'm like, holy shit, that's Ed Norton's boss from Fight Club.
Is that who that is?
Fuck yeah, that's who it is. I love Fight Club. I love the shit out of Fight Club. And that's crazy, too, because this is 2002. Fight Club was, 99, maybe 2000?
Yeah, somewhere around there. 98 to 2000.
Was just in a big fucking David Fincher movie, and now he's all of a sudden, like, backup goon and the Catwalk.
He's in one scene of a David Fincher movie.
He's in multiple scenes. He also gets to witness Ed Norton beating the shit out of himself, which is one of the marquee scenes of the entire movie. So
that's a good point.
I was sad he did not have more to do in this, but they're like, yeah, there is a neutrino storm coming, which, courtesy of Memory Alpha, we did encounter neutrino storms before. It was what? The fair. Oh God. Fairhaven. Yeah.
They've encountered them before, but at what price?
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting to think about, though. Like we know what we should know. I didn't know at the time, but in the 24th century, they can weather it. It's still no joke, though, right? Like,
yeah,
that required Voyager to subject itself to the worst holodeck adventure of all time. Back in the old Enterprise, the old Starfleet,
you had to hide in the nacelles. The dignity was preserved. Perhaps more so in the nacelles than having to go to Fairhaven. But they come aboard, they talk about it, and this is what they work out: is this storm, the crew will not survive the radiation.
The ship may not even survive.
The ship, they establish early on, they think they can make the ship survive, but it's the people, and they end up centering on a plan of having everyone in the nacelle because it has a special kind of metal specifically for radiation absorption that is around it, which kind of makes sense with the internal logic of a warp engine.
Absolutely. And it's the little details, and I don't know if this is Phyllis Strong and Mike Sussman. That's all I need. Some fucking throwaway line, right?
Yeah.
First I identify, and Flock says, well, sickbay might hold up the best of this. I've got a little bit of shielding in there. I think we might be able to make it through, but Archer's like, we can't fit, 83 or 86? 83. We can't fit 83 crew members in. However, there is a continuity error at this point. Like, if sickbay could have survived it, then why do you have to move all of his animals out?
Yeah, I don't think they addressed that. They mentioned that sickbay can make it, and then they act like sickbay can't hold his slugs or whatever, that they would be too sensitive to the radiation. They don't have like a line in there that's like, oh, they have to be there because they wouldn't even survive the small amount of radiation them to get through, or There's no bridge between that statement and the kind of C plot that is Phlox's.
I like the quick bridge math where they're like, oh no, the nacelle catwalks, those might work. And then Phlox is like, well, how thick is the unobtainium there? And they're like, oh, 3 per microns or whatever. Just Phlox pulling the space math out of his ass. Like, yeah, that'll survive the storm. Sure. Everybody's like, yeah, cool.
Well, we know Phlox is very casual about life. You know, he's a little bit more laissez-faire. Like, yeah, we might survive. Maybe we don't. Like, it's kind of his attitude.
So they got 4 hours to prep for this, and they're going to be accommodating their new Fight Club insurance agents. And it's time to get cracking with a montage.
We have what, in honor of my other show, we have what I would call above replacement level Mayweather in this episode, which, you know, we're always on the lookout for, is Mayweather something that is adding or subtracting to this? And I feel like in this episode, they give you the best kind of pieces of Mayweather, where he's with the part of the montage trying to get the area ready with Tucker, where Tucker asks, like, oh, I bet you've been through one of these before. And he tells like this horrifying story about how they were locked away in one chamber for months and the power and gravity went out. They all thought that they were going to die in the cold of space.
They were in the ship's core.
Yeah.
The ship's core. And that made me think of, what was Murder Hologram that tried, one of the murder holograms that tried to kill B'Elanna, that squeezed her heart, and then...
Not the first one, the second one.
Yeah, the hologram that was a beast of burden that had to live in the ship's reactor, like scooping radioactive waste and throwing it in the trash or whatever, right? Like,
right.
Makes sense. The reactor's got bad stuff in it, so it's got really good shielding. And then thinking of Mayweather having to be in there with his family for 6 weeks, that was an amazing story. I thought he delivered it well. And it's also a good reason why Mayweather comes off as a little punch drunk, a little silly sometimes. It's like, oh, this guy's got severe radiation poisoning that sometimes rears its head. Like, well, it wasn't a transporter accident that made him this way. It was living in a fucking nuclear reactor for 6 weeks.
You listen, medical science in the 22nd century is actually pretty advanced. They were able to cure the cancer that he had, but they could not fix the damage to his personality. That is what happened, is that his body was made whole, but the price that he paid was that he is a plank of wood.
There's a lot of good stuff going on, especially in the beginning of this episode. I really like the tone, the sense of urgency, the sense of looming dread.
The reminder that they need a toilet.
And that's its own separate thing. I'm just saying the very often in Enterprise specifically, whatever the bad thing is, I don't feel like it really carries any weight. You know, the crew is going to survive. It's not a big deal. And there's going to be some silly scheme they're going to come up with to survive. But like, this storm legit feels like some fucking bad news.
Yeah.
So kudos to V'ger or whoever was behind them being able to accomplish this. And then, yeah, we get to see a new set piece, which are the nacelle catwalks. What I thought was interesting about this, first and foremost, is even though these nacelles are like at an angle, and I figured it'd be like an incline, because I remember from original series, and they even kind of show it in Strange New Worlds, like the Enterprise A, it's like a ladder they climb to get up to warp nacelles. This, it seems like a straight line, but I guess if you can play with gravity, there's no reason to put any of that on an incline, right?
It's always going to feel like it's a straight line because your sense of gravity changes as you're moving through the ship. So
I thought that was cool, and exactly what you said. And this was my complaint about, what was a fucking terrible episode we just watched? Oh, Precious Cargo. They're stuck in this escape pod for over a day. Like, where are you putting the poops at? And that's what
one of the very first plot lines here is make sure there's a toilet.
What do we do with the poo poo?
They emphasize the power of the storm, I think, in a clever way, which is Archer says to T'Pol, because T'Pol had like shared a story about how it severely damaged a ship before, a Vulcan ship, so it's serious. Archer quietly confronts her and is like, yeah, you didn't mention that everyone on that ship died. With your story. You merely said it was severely damaged. To which, like T'Pol's like, I must have just remembered it incorrectly,
Paul,
trying to cover up lying to to comfort her crewmates.
T'Pol is becoming quite the liar. She lies, it feels like every other episode at this point.
It's not a lie, it's an omission, as Spock would say.
Maybe.
But Spock's half human, so, I mean...
And that ties into kind of a double criticism, or observation, I should say, at this point. So there's going to be a scene between Phlox and T'Pol, where T'Pol goes to check in on him. Again, you only got 4 hours to prep this stuff. He's got all of his animals. And she's like, yeah, you're behind schedule. And he's like, well, you're only giving me 2/3 of the room I need for all this stuff that you've allotted me. And she's like, well, make your animals share cages. And he's like, they're going to eat each other. And then Phlox gets, I would say, emotional in his own, not even emotional in his own way. He gets emotional and says, I'm not used to having to basically, I forget what the phrasing is, beg.
I'm not used to making emotional appeals.
But, please give me a room. And instantly in my head, I'm like, okay, well, this conflicts a couple things. A, it shows that he's got a bond with these animals, which we've already been told the Noblians don't have because of that awful Night in Sickbay episode with the conversations regarding Archer's relationship with Porthos, and then even jumping back into fucking Dear Doctor, where, he reinforced that they don't maintain these emotional connections, and also he's okay with shit dying because that's the way that things happen. Then this motherfucker shows more concern about some goddamn snakes and reptiles dying than he did about that entire planet of people he condemned to space AIDS. So where does your fucking sense of sometimes shit happens and, that's just nature's course, and sometimes you get caught in a fucking...
I used to be against you never letting go of Dear Doctor, but it's starting to grow on me. That
I've let many things go, but I'm just saying at this point it really stood out as like, this does not seem like a Phlox thing to be happening right now. And then almost equally disappointing is the fact that T'Pol is just kind of like won over by his plea. It's like, okay, fine, you can have more space. And I was like, it's been a while since T'Pol's really been a bitch. Like, she was kind of bitchy in Vanishing Point, but that was just Hoshi's hallucination.
Right, it's Hoshi's version of her, which makes sense from Hoshi's perspective because... their relationship has been contentious. They did a whole episode about it.
Yeah, they've also fixed it like 3 times. She's
right. It's Bolana disease.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They're loopy. They've got a loop. But I think this would have been a great point for her to be a ball buster and say, if you can't pick, I'm going to pick for you.
Or at least offer. Like if emotional attachment is confining your decision-making skills, I can make the selections for you. So not like being a bitch, but just being like not emotional, like offering, like genuine offer, like, oh, if it's difficult, I can take care of it for you.
Or say like, I've already prepared a list of, yes, I know. And I found these animals to actually be the most expendable. It makes me question at this point the degree that she has warmed up, if it's intentional or if it's just something in the executive team saying like, yes, she's a robot lady, but she will become a warm human more frequently than not. Whereas I think 7 and 9 would have stuck to her guns and been like, all the stuff I just talked about, 7 and 9 would have stuck to that. Like, they're warming and they're softening the edges onto Paul at an exponential rate.
There's going to be more story reason as to why this has taken place, to be perfectly blunt with you, which it's easy for me to say it's intentional because I know that there's episodes specifically about what you're talking about. But to the credit of the show, and this is kind of where its quality shines through even in these crap moments, these are the things they're good at, is you're noticing that T'Pol is becoming softer, not necessarily emotional, but emotionally... Unvulcan. Well, it won't be long before there's an episode about exactly what you've noticed. When the show finally understands that it's its strong point, that's when it gets good. When it's like, oh, this is what works. This is what we've been missing all along. And that is what they develop through the last 2 seasons, and why those 2 seasons are so well regarded. But right now, they're too busy doing fucking nonsense like Night in Sickbay, so,
So they're bringing the ponytail sleaze bags up in the nacelles, and it's very clear very quickly that these guys are not what they seem.
Yeah, they bitch amongst themselves about their cover story.
They say, "Oh, we were stellar cartographers, and we're not ready for this." And they're like, "Oh, great, we
Yeah, we need new star charts.
We were looking for some space maps. Like, how fortuitous that you would come to us, and you are exactly the guys we need." And then Archer walks away, and not Ed Norton's boss goes, "Jesus fucking Christ, dude! I don't know anything about star charts." You're like, "Shut the fuck up." So you're like, all right. And instantly, and I think that's the strongest part of this. No, one of the stronger parts of this episode is they throw a great red herring out there that now you're assuming that these guys are going to be the bad guys, that these guys are going to be causing nonsense. And I think it's a great misdirectional plot they put into play here.
They engage in a lot of other suspicious activity, too. It's not just this intro. Like, as the episode continues on before you really get to, like, conflict, they are chanting stuff behind a curtain. Like, they're, like, doing the Kali Ma ritual back there.
They are frying in a pan what appears to be a face hugger.
Yeah, they're, like, making their own food and creating, like, smoke and all this other stuff. They complain all the time. It's like
they only sleep one day a week, so the rest of the time they're up, like, bothering. And they got trips stationed right against these guys. I really like the set. It's like the main catwalk, and then it's all these hobo camps off to the side, partitioned off by blankets and other real low tech shit.
You're walking through a little Hooverville of Enterprise,
right? While they're still in this "we're packing things up" phase, they cut over to Archer, who's packing up his bag, and he's going to see the neutronic storm out the window, which looks fucking cool, and he's going to have a little scene there. But I'm watching him pack his bag, and I see, oh, cool, maybe he's got the water polo bag out. That was like a neat Easter egg before. And I felt good because I remember that he liked water polo. Little did I know they were going to beat me over the head with that fucking iPad scene. But he doesn't have the water polo bag. He's got what on my 4K TV down in my basement, my super high def thing that just really lights everything up. I'm like, well, holy shit, that's a fucking Nike logo on his duffel bag. And I pause the TV and I take a picture and I post it up in the trauma support group. Quick side note, I fucking hate Facebook. It's been a while since I've actually like looked at Facebook, but at this point, like I go down and I scroll, and there's so little genuine content on my feed, like people talking about their day. It's either shitty meme, like no memes that make me laugh, goofy groups I'm in, minus trauma support group, which actually, I'm interested in. It's like bullshit tertiary stuff, or it's just fucking pure ads. Like the place is basically a fucking ghost town.
Yeah, I know this is a bit of an unscheduled turnoff, but Facebook somewhere around 2016, 2017, I think it made this turn into being way too ad driven and way too page driven. So
hiding unique content and just the stuff that's left over at this point. Like normally I go in there, I like go to the groups I care about or whatever, but like, just scroll my feed. I was like, no fucking wonder everybody bailed on this shit. So anyways, I posted that up there and I was like, oh, look at me, pat on my back. I saw this thing that was just them being sloppy, that this Nike bag with the logo. Because even if what are these 720 episodes? I don't think they're 1080p. Most people didn't have high def TVs back there.
Correct.
It's hard enough to see on my super high def TV. You can see the picture I took. I wouldn't have thought in a million years that was an intentional product placement. But here it says, this episode is the first episode of Star Trek which featured product placement, the Nike Incorporated logo. It's the swoop on Captain Archer's water polo bag. What the fuck? What?
When they say product placement, do they have a source for the idea that they have been paid for this? Because I wonder if this was still just a mistake and they decided to call it.
No, there's not a footnote on here.
Okay, so I'm going to call that. I'm going to call it a little sus. It's a little suspect because I firmly believe that it's far more likely to have been because of how difficult the logo is to see, and would have been impossible on standard def screens, which would have been the norm then. I think that this was just they got a bag out of props and they didn't darken the logo enough, and it still had the logo on it.
Product placement was actually a clickable link in Memory Alpha. It says other real products featured in Star Trek was Pyrex, which was Elementary Dear Data, Dom Perignon and Generations, Nike Incorporated, which was in Catwalk, and they're also citing what the fuck is the Rock episode Sunsanake?
Yeah.
I don't remember Nike logo being visible in anything in that.
The bottle of Dom, like I could see that. I could see that as actual product placement. That was for a movie, so that was probably worth enough money to do it. But this isn't product placement. They were trying to conceal the product. They had already blacked out the logo. You barely see it.
Well, I saw it, and we just spent the past 5 minutes talking about Nike. So good job, Nike account guy from 2002. You really penetrated the demographic.
The days begin on the catwalk. Got they're playing cards. Archer has a conversation with Hoshi where she's like whitening her teeth, and now that we have officially accepted the Hoshi Archer used to be a couple canon.
I accept it, yes.
The conversations that they have are much more interesting when you interpret them through that lens, because she's like being a little like sassy, like, can't you just order the storm to go away? It's like sort of like, who the fuck else on this boat would say something like that to Archer? Like, oh, yeah.
What if Archer just like replied?
Only your ex-girlfriend can say that.
What if Archer said, "That's the stupidest fucking thing you've ever said"? What? Why would you? You look like a fucking asshole saying that.
It's like her only scene in the episode is like, "Hey, can you order the storm to go away?"
Yeah, and it's interesting the setup they have here because they're in the storm. They've taken some side junction closet and turned it into the makeshift bridge. I really liked, especially after what happened in what was the Everybody Goes Crazy episode? Singularity. Trip goes, "Captain, you want to try out your new chair?" And it's a fucking bucket upside down with a net over it.
The net is such a nice touch. Like,
so it doesn't slide around.
We don't want your butt to chafe in one spot on this bucket. We want multiple chafe locations. Spread it out. That way it will go away faster.
Mayweather's control panel to fly the fucking ship effectively looks like he's trying to hotwire an ATM, and there's just fiber optic cable. It all looks so like rushed and shitty and low grade.
It's like he's trying to play Wing Commander 3 on a 16-inch CRT. He's got his like little.
It's like he's trying to play Red Dead Redemption 2 on a TI-85 graphing calculator.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I'm wondering about this time too. Like, if this neutronic storm is blowing through, does that mean that everything on that M-class planet Awesome just died?
They're not clear about the impact of these storms on planets either time they've ever shown up. So,
well,
maybe the electromagnetic, shield, whatever the thing that protects planets from radiation storms will fend it off. Some sort of pseudoscience technobabble.
I assume not. Otherwise, they'd be like, well, let's just get everybody down to the planet's surface real quick. So, R.I.P. Super Grand Canyon planet, I guess. Cross that one off the list to rival Rise's vacation potentials.
Well, it's still there, but by the time they get back, the Romulans have shown up with the mines.
with the invisible mines.
The much better ones, thanks to Archer and French showing them how to design.
Yeah. Along with everybody else on their casual Sesame Street of everybody living up each other's ass, you also have Porthos in the mix.
Hanging out on the bridge, effectively.
I mean, there's as true as Hoshi and Archer being past boyfriend and girlfriend, I must believe that this dog is just fucking heavily medicated 24/7. That or part of the eugenics wars. That or part of the eugenics wars was some real heavy genetic engineering into dog DNA to make beagles not just bark and make everybody want to kill them constantly.
This beagle is so well genetically engineered that when Archer calls for everyone to brace for impact while they're navigating into the storm, his dog goes and braces for impact. like they do a shot where he's like, all the humans are grabbing onto things, and he like goes behind a wall to brace himself. Like, bro, you made like the genius dog from Cowboy Bebop. You made Ein.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Who's this? Who's Ensign's 16-year-old over there asking him for fucking crossword?
She was apparently on the high school program.
Did you get a permission slip from your parents that you could go on a fucking 5-year deep space mission where all sorts of bad stuff is frequently going to happen to this exploratory crew? You see, are you tall enough to be on this ship, ma'am?
It's like they had to carry one miner with them because the Vulcans warned them of like this piece of space where like the judgment of the Hellhammer will come down if you don't have someone who's not yet reached the age of majority. So they're telling her like, we're fine, nothing bad's
There's a chance
happening.
we might have to put you on the bridge and you're gonna have to say you're the child captain. It's weird, but like, it's just shit we got to deal with.
We got a whole lamplight from Fallout New Vegas thing we got to deal with. You know,
like it. That was actually Terra Nova. So things going along pretty swimmingly. Speaking of which, we have a awkward scene where apparently Archer and T'Pol are sleeping literally across the hall from each other, and Archer's bothering her with his water polo bullshit where we find out he can't just watch TV with keeping his mouth shut. And then she's like, yeah, you're bothering me slightly. And then he goes to bed. And then she's tapping away on her iPad. And everybody's just watching this like, she could just turn the volume down because like we all have iPads and we know how this shit works. But then she's like, oh, am I bothering you? And he's like, yeah, just a little bit. And basically uses it an opportunity to say, listen, we're all of each other's ass here. This is a great opportunity for you to get out and socialize with the crew. And she's like, well, what I wanted her to say was, hey, remember how humans stink and now you guys don't have showers and you're basically in a subway tunnel stink box / sweat box. So no, I don't want to go. You guys stink enough up here. I don't need to smell everybody else's BO plus whatever cooked face hugger is back there.
You've been back there? It's basically a game of Metro is breaking out. They're about to turn AK-47 bullets into currency.
Yeah.
I don't want to go out there. I don't want to smell that. I'm already stuck in here with you, Ensign McChadface, and your dog. Like,
yeah, I'm stuck in with you, your dog, and Mayweather doesn't even have his shirt off, popping those guns out.
I don't even get that. You want me to go back there in the hobo village? That's going to be a fat no.
That would have been that would have been good if it was still hot and uncomfortable, and that would have been a great time just to have Mayweather in a undershirt just for fun.
This was a clear opportunity to have this man's shirt off that they did not take, and that is a crime. That's a crime every time.
That is the absence of the feminine voice that Voyager had. So shame on you, Phyllis Strong, for not getting that in there. Although that might have taken some Lisa Kink to get rolling.
I don't know. Once you see what he looks like with his shirt off, I mean, I think everyone knows that has to happen as much as possible.
Maybe Bakula came back and said, listen, this guy keeps his shirt on or I'm walking.
It's like the rest of the crew is like, we are too emasculate. All of us are living in the gym. We're in the best shape of our lives. Mm-hmm. And all of us put together are nothing compared to this man. This is not fair. This is not equitable. This is not hot equity.
He's bullied the muscle milk from Muscle Milk real quick before you think it's something out of Vox Sola is a weight gain supplement shown in many U.S. gyms. He's bullied the Muscle Milk up. God, there's no way to say that right. She goes, hey, listen, I'm not skilled at fraternizing. And I was afraid for a moment there that we're going to fall back into the Dr. 7 of 9 trope where I'm going to give you social lessons and, you're going to learn to not be a robot lady and you can fall in love with fucking Chakotay in the romance that nobody ever asked for. But luckily they don't go too deep in that. And by the end, she will have branched out a little bit.
Yeah.
But
they show her making an effort to follow through. There's not really like much else that happens in this episode about it. But they do show like a completion of this thought, which is she does. She goes to movie night.
I like the poker games. Just a quick bit of continuity. Reed's ante to drive the pot up is pineapple cobbler. And I thought that was neat that they remembered that he actually likes pineapple.
And then, she only has broccoli to call with. But they allow it. Given the circumstances.
Chef coming down and handing out pot roast for the third time that week or whatever. I love that Chef is like the fucking teacher from Muppet Babies where you don't see the face.
Yes.
It's just the shoes in his hands. It's just this faceless guy. I guess they couldn't afford Steven Seagal or whatever for that scene, so they just got to keep you wondering.
They managed to keep the secret of what Chef looks like until the last episode.
Really?
Yeah. So they do a good job of protecting this as a bit.
Is it going to be Clint Howard?
The last episode of Star Trek Enterprise is something that we might talk about for 3 hours.
Just a Jonathan Frakes.
It's like there's so much to take apart when it comes to the choices made in the final episode of Enterprise.
So here's what's interesting. This is about a page of notes for me. I had so much fun and enjoyment with this episode, and they didn't even really get to the real plot yet. So what happens is they are living their life in this cramped, and again, like, take all the other fucking episodes. This has been a better episode up to this point than the rest of the fucking season. And it especially makes me mad with Vanishing Point that you can have these little bullshit slice of life episodes and they're good. This writing team maybe specifically can handle it, whereas like Braga and Berman wouldn't be able to, but like this stuff is plausible. As a standalone episode with no clear antagonist, it's just humans dealing with the perils of space. It works. But they do go with it.
It's much like Vanishing Point in that is not only an opportunity for a slice of life that we really want out of the show, where it shines, but it's also a very Star Trek specific plot. Like, there's really baked in some details you really could only effectively do in Star Trek in terms of sci-fi. It's the way that the whole explorer element works, being confined to a single part of the ship. Like, you don't see that as a Battlestar Galactica.
Getting a toilet, but not getting a shower.
Yeah, like this is a very Trek episode, and this is a very good counterpoint to Vanishing Point in that it's that concept but executed well with an internal antagonist, with like a build to a more exciting Act 3. You still did all of those things that you always feel like you have to do, or it's too boring, and it ends up positive overall. Anyway, that plot starts to break out because it seems like the engines are starting to restart, which is not good.
They're because, like, hey, Trip, this is about the time that we find out that alien skeevy ponytails. Vlad Goldblum had a ponytail.
You're right. He did. But I guess like that was called for because he was skeevy.
He was skeevy. Well, these guys are skeevy.
He's also European. And I think that might be just, you have to be allowed to have one.
True. So he's yelling at them about cooking a face hugger in a frying pan over some sort of explosive part of the ship. Oh, hey, real quick side note. Important part about these nacelle catwalks they're in. They had to turn the warp core off because when the warp core is on, this thing is like an incineration chamber. So not good for human life. They say, Trip, get over here. Come over to the makeshift bridge. Yeah, pull up that milk crate over here and take a look. It looks like the warp core, some part of the warp core is trying to turn itself back on. He's like, that's impossible. That must be a bad sensor reading. They go, nope, now another part's up. And he's like, that cannot be. That is physically impossible. And someone's going to have to go check it out, which at first I thought was going to be like, oh, someone's going to have to get radiation sickness. Like, are they going to draw straws? Is that going to be like the dark turn that someone's going to have to this is going to be the first death on Enterprise? But I forgot about the EV suits.
They even show a quick shot during the montage of them taking one. So, established. The
level of detail in this episode is just
yeah, like they remembered to establish
the criticisms away.
They established EV suits were brought with a 2-second scene of someone taking one.
All I need.
And so Trip goes down. He's told he's got 22 minutes before his protection fades from the EV suit. He needs to be back by then. And as he solid snakes his way through the ship to see what's going on, he discovers some real, solid Delta Quadrant level space jackbooty motherfuckers on the ship. These dudes they had the black standing collars, that is the universal marker of space fascism. Mm-hmm. And they got
the boots. They got the middle-aged white guy haircuts with some gel in it. He gets up on, I don't know, the fuse box, the space fuse box. And this is the one where they put the camera inside and there's like a rolling door that goes up and down. Mm-hmm. It's cool. They've used this shot before. I appreciate it. He's in there and he sees like that garage door is pulled back down and there's shit all over the place. So you're like, clearly someone is fucking with this thing. This is not a software malfunction. This is not Space Monster. Someone is doing something here. And then he sees flashlights coming and instantly I'm like, well, clearly this is Ed Norton's boss and skeevy ponytail guy. And that's the con here, is that these guys are stealing warp plasma or something else. This is the secret agenda that they have and they've been sneaking off. And it's not. We see these space army guys, and then it's like, okay, well, they're not in spacesuits. So now it's got me questioning everything. And it's still not crystal clear, if these are the bad guys, or if these are bad guys, or if the ponytail trio, the ponytail coterie, if they're bad guys. And maybe there's still something goofy at play. Is this neutronic storm actually dangerous to humans, or is this part of a long con of we're going to get the whole crew in this hideaway tube? It's so rare in Enterprise for me not to know which way a script is going to go and it not to be the most obvious fucking thing in the world.
Yeah, they pick a different lane here at kind of every one of those decision points and make a point of convincing you through some implications that these 3 random guest stars are clearly going to be the bad guys. So they play with the trope, as you already pointed out, and then even when it's time to execute on what the plot twist is, they don't pick the most obvious option for the twist. Because what happens is Trip comes back, and they're in the middle, they in media res an interrogation of the trio, which is an interestingly shot because it's on the catwalk and they're under, and like the whole crew's watching, right? Can't get away from the crowd. Usually the stuff is in just with senior officers or just with 2 or 3 people. So you got everyone's watching the interrogation as Archer is, there's 2 dudes with rifles. They don't have any way to restrain him.
Now, here's the interesting thing, Joe, is, he's got guys with guns surrounding him. They didn't clear the entire nacelle and just put a table and chair there and then have T'Pol walk out like suddenly she's a space judge that nobody would know.
It's like they wrote this episode as a specific fuck you to the one that we just saw.
It's like, where did Archer all of a sudden get this advanced degree in common sense interrogations that he's not pulling the stupidest fucking lie possible to try and con a poorly conceived villain into a ridiculous conclusion? It was just so striking to see. So like, hey, cough it up. What the fuck's going on there? And then they come clean and they say, well, listen, yeah, we lied to you. Those dudes, however, are bad guys. Those are some space Nazis. We used to roll with them. We found out they're not actually like the militia dudes we thought they would be. It's more like they're space pirates with access to a laundromat. And they are here to steal your ship. And normally they would steal a ship and also kill everybody aboard. So we ran away. We tried to resign our posts and they said no. And then we ran away. And yeah, they're probably here looking for us. And we're sorry that you got wrapped up in this. Meanwhile, in the ship, also we established that this alien race of skeevy ponytail people is immune to the space radiation conveniently.
Right. And that's why they don't have suits, and that's why we get to see them in their jackboots.
We also see that even though Tuvok is not at all involved with this episode, there is no sort of cybersecurity whatsoever. None of the doors are locked, including the fucking exterior door of Enterprise, which we were told they polarized their hull. Like, why would we need to lock the outside door? We live out in a cabin in the woods. Who would ever come out here and fuck with us? There's no passwords on the computer. Leader Hitler guy is this dude.
This dude is fucking for real. So when they show all of the jackbooty dudes, they eventually cut to the jackbooty dude Captain Nazi in Archer's ready room, going through his personnel files. They shoot this guy in deep shadow, and his voice is so perfect for this role. It's insane. The actor is Danny Goldring. He is a worker. This dude was all over television from basically the 1980s 1970s all the way through the 2000s.
Holy shit, this guy literally was a Nazi. He played Carr in Voyager the Killing Game.
Yeah, he was the head Herodian.
Is he
right?
Common Sense Herodian that like sees the light?
He's the leader who's like, we need to do something other than hunt everyone, and ultimately tries to make the deal with Janeway, but dies, but Janeway still gives him the tech. Basically,
God, that was such a good fake out. I loved Worst World.
We didn't. I don't think we were when we reviewed the Killing Game.
Worst World.
I don't think we praised it enough. You know, like
because I didn't know what was going to happen in season sucks.
Yeah, like we reviewed it and we were like, it was good, but I think we like nitpicked it a lot. I think we were fat on the land at that point. We were so used to good Voyager, we didn't know we needed to appreciate a well executed cinematic 2-parter that way.
I never knew about Virtuoso.
It's like you get into the dregs and you're like, oh, remember when the Herodian were Nazis and the show was fun?
This dude, if you would close your eyes, I had to stop a couple times and looked, and I'm like, is that Michael Ironsides in a wig? Like, this dude straight up has that fucking, like, Rico, get in line.
He just nails it. He's like almost...
You know what you have to do.
It's like very much like your assignment is your evil space captain. And he's like, I know exactly what you want me to do. Here it is. Evil space captain. Do this.
Oh, and you need an evil space captain on a Star Trek Network TV budget. Old Danny Goldring's your guy to go to.
Yeah, so old Danny Goldring is definitely going to fucking take the ship exactly the way it's described.
He's watching all of Archer's logs. There's no passwords on any of this stuff. He knows crew. This guy, not only is an evil captain, he is a competent evil captain.
Yes. He does not execute his underlings for failing him. He informs them that they must now work harder on his behalf.
Yes. And if you continue to fail me, then we will go back to Camp Warhammer, while I will use our state-of-the-art hanging or gallows to hang to you. So, yeah, the ship is effectively under siege now. And unfortunately, like I said, we didn't show the chef's face, so it couldn't actually turn out to be Steven Seagal. He cannot go through slowly.
If only he was here to do slow kung fu on the behalf of Enterprise, it would be just enough.
Top keto, maybe. I don't. There's so much good Steven Seagal hate on YouTube. Start looking at some of these parody videos. It's a gold mine. It is a fucking gold mine of people having a laugh at Steven Seagal's expense.
Ralph the Movie Maker is a channel on YouTube that like watched the Steven Seagal filmography from this era of him.
Mm-hmm.
And like tried to put the story together, you know, like that he is like the favorite movie star of
himself,
of trillionaire Eastern European, you know, criminals. That's why this is happening.
That's a good group to bankroll. They'll always make sure that there's a non-connective, completely unnecessary sex scene to seal the deal. There's not. Again, this is a great episode. There's a lot of shit that still has to happen, and it can be summarized by Trip gets back. They interrogate these guys. They find out that they're probably telling the truth, and well, how are we gonna fix this? Evil Nazis don't know that the crew is on board because they're in a heavily shielded compartment. They're trying to reignite the warp engine so they can effectively salvage the ship. And unfortunately for the crew of Enterprise, they don't really have a lot of time to figure out the best plan possible because they reignite the warp core. And now they've got 20 minutes before the heating elements lining this corridor get super hot and cook everybody to death.
Right. They put the ticking clock in. It is going to be a team kill. If they don't pull this off, it's going to kill everybody. So pretty firm, good stakes for the circumstance. You know, you don't want to pull this card too often of like, we're all going to die. This is good use of that. And the plan is not exactly complex. It's cause a distraction while T'Pol and Archer, because Reed gets into the firefight in the galley, I believe.
No, I thought Archer gets in the firefight.
Oh, that's right.
Because Archer gets out and says
Archer's the one that sends the message to distract them to come fight him in the galley, and it's Reed and T'Pol that are the ones fixing the warp core. That's it.
Archer hits him with some diplomacy, saying, "Oh, you know what? Also, jumping back as I'm criticizing Archer's interrogation, at no point did he encourage them to beat him about the face, head, and neck area either. This
No.
is very atypical Archer. I would say overall, might be the best portrayal of Jonathan Archer that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I can't remember the next best one in terms of him being a competent captain of the Starship Enterprise.
So he goes back into the subroutine, which I did criticize a little bit, that like Archer's zany lie saves the day. But sends a communication out saying, "You're sitting in my chair. Get off my ship. I know you're space pirates." Evil Nazi's like, "Well, actually, we're the law in this part of town, and you're harboring fugitives. So not only am I taking your ship, but I'm also bringing you back, and you're going to be executed for war crimes for fucking helping these dudes out." Archer had lied, of course, saying the rest of the crew had already died from radiation poisoning. And he goes, "Well, if you don't get off the ship, I'm going to have it destroyed." And then Space Nazi's like, "Dude, I've been reading your Wikipedia page. I know all the fucking shit in your memory alpha. Your dad designed this thing. It's a big deal. I'm going to call your bluff."
He ain't blowing the ship up. It's great. Again, competent evil space captain. This is the guy. Like, he doesn't actually make a wrong decision on this, except for, refusing to give up for the first 3 times, I guess. But they still get away. But
so here, there's really no, had that ship.
He doesn't get a W, but doesn't really take an L. Like,
he gave it the old college try.
He did.
They pinpoint where that broadcast came from. So Archer was initially the distraction. It was to Paul. Trip couldn't go back out because Trip already had some radiation exposure. There's a little Chernobyl in play here. It must have been Reed then, right?
It was Reed.
Mayweather.
Yeah, it was Reed
flying the ship.
Another good Mayweather moment is that he starts to steer the ship into a big old subspace tornado that is going to be bad news if they hit it.
Yeah.
This is where you get probably the best effects, because there's a shot, like, once they finally decide to abandon ship. And this episode, by the way, even has a passable gunfight, which is a real shocker. Like,
the bad guys show up. They see Archer. They start shooting. Archer's in this big clunky fucking spacesuit, and there's like pew 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 pew. There's a real dramatic shot, which should have been another crew member getting shot and dying. Like, instead it's a slow motion shot of a piece of cabbage getting winged and like exploding.
Yeah, like a roast explodes or whatever. It's the most kinetic a gunfight in this fucking show has been in fucking months. And so they do that.
They're tearing the mess hall up real. So the pantry, mess hall, whatever. Like, this thing's getting rocked. Shit's falling all over the place. And all I'm thinking,
Chef's gonna be so pissed when he goes back in here.
Every time the ship like gets into turbulence, like, this has to happen over and over again. Chef is a lunatic if he just keeps his stuff hanging on walls. Maybe he's a sadist, and like whoever his little bitch cabin boy is, like, he enjoys making this guy clean the mess up. Like,
every time there's turbulence, you gotta get all my ladles off the ground.
Chef, can't we like lock these things down or get magnets? No, we're gonna use the hooks. But the gravity keeps going out, Chef. Clean them up. It's actually, Chef is Danny Goldring, and he's like evil Nazi captain, but he's a chef. I said clean them up.
And the effect shot that I was trying to get to is the ship detaches when they give up and rolls over the top of Enterprise and then fucks off. And it's all done in this, in this background of them going towards this eddy. Everything is very well detailed. Great shot. Fantastic. Better than I would expect at the time,
Or expect for episode 12.
Yeah,
episode 1, sure. End of the season, sure. But like for a mid-season compilation, this is really good. Finally, they can't wrestle the control away from Helm, because for the first time ever, they weren't able to reroute ship back to the bridge. Mayweather's got him on this suicide course, because what we are seeing here right now, Joe, and this will be the episode title for this, is the first Janeway. The first time a Starfleet captain said, "It's my way, or I'm going to blow this motherfucker up."
To pull the Janeway, to threaten to destroy oneself as a way to achieve one's aims.
Yeah. It's my way or the Janeway. Like it, or get the fuck out of here. So yeah, finally one of the sub commander Common Sense who's like, we need to get the fuck out of here. This is also all the militia guys look one way, and then you've got the skeevy, schlubby ponytails guys. And even in my notes, I'm like, militia all looks like fucking Ivan Dragos.
They are all cut men with gray haircuts that look like they've been Marines for exactly 87 years.
Versus 3 guys who look like they're the fucking comic book guys from The Simpsons.
Yes, one literally.
So, yeah, very clear. The good guys, the good aliens, I think they should have been pretty clear early on that they were not cut from the same cloth as these bad guys. Finally, like, all right, you know what? We know how this story ends. We're gonna get back to our ship. We're gonna fuck off. I was half expecting their ship to get like blown up or something.
Oh yeah, but no, they get away and
go off to terrorize other people.
Mayweather has a great moment where he keeps telling T'Pol, like, I have to stop steering into this thing. Like, no, seriously, we're gonna die if I keep doing this. I need to cut off now. We need to leave. We did our best. It's time to bail out. And T'Pol's like, no, we haven't heard yet. And then fucking Archer comes across the con and he's like, Mayweather, the fuck you doing? You're off. Don't Thelma and Louise us.
They're gone. They left already.
Get it the fuck away from that thing.
Turns out T'Pol's got a bad case of the Janeways too, and she just wants the ship to blow up also. But the other space radiation from Singularity that made the human crew crazy didn't affect the Vulcans. And what nobody knew is this entire time, the radiation's been affecting the Vulcan, and now she's crazy and suicidal.
Oh, yeah, it's the reverse.
For that last-minute plot twist, like, the real bad guy, turns out, is actually T'Pol.
But Mayweather does that pilot shit and manages to prevent them from getting blown up. And they don't end the episode quite yet. They've defeated the space hazard, but that's when they do the scene where they're all, okay, we escaped certain death. You've got that high of adrenaline, and now it's like, ooh, let's all watch a Western.
It's actually an episode of Kung Fu, according to Good Old Memory Alpha. They watch someone get shot. They're like, why'd the sheriff shoot his own man? And then T'Pol rubs her balls all over his face and is like, well, didn't you know that he's actually a bad guy? And they're like, And then there's a cool follow-up after that, which is Trip coming over and saying, hey, really happy you hung out with us. That was cool. You should do that more. We watch crappy movies all the time.
Yeah, and it was just a nice, quiet, like, character-building moment for everyone involved. For T'Pol, obviously having accepted Archer's advice, that she actually participated in it in good faith, and then Trip reached out to her to say, hey, listen, why don't you join us more often? We like you. We would like to spend time with you.
It was refreshing, especially in light of 7 of 9 becoming a real girl, to see her, again, put a good faith effort that was competently executed instead of her just butting her head against a wall. Like, I cannot human.
Yeah.
Does not compute.
This is a natural kind of piece of delicate character growth. Some finesse.
And they all leave, and they're like, cool. And I wanted to see more people like, geez, I need to take a shower, and I look like I've been living in a tube for a week, but...
There's a little bit of like, let's just get... They're all relieved. They're all going back to their quarters. All the water will be used in the next 5 minutes.
That's my first thing was like, man, that fucking boiler better be ready to go.
It's going to come out like a whipped dog later. Like, and then they do cut loose the ponytail gang. They're like, all right, that was over. And it's like, what are you guys going to do? We're going to go to this system. I'm sure we'll be safe. Archer says, good luck. I'm like, we've done enough.
And there's a cool thread that runs through the episode because Trip does do a considerable amount of like complaining about them. And in the end, you're kind of like, these guys suck. Like, they totally just brought the space Nazis down on them. But as Archer points out, like, we would have been caught with our pants down. That's like, they saved everybody's life. So we're not going to throw them in the brig and or our airlock, which apparently is a place we put people we don't like, that we've interrogated to varying degrees. But also, hey, yeah, they saved our life. So see you later.
So we've had this uplifting experience. We've been taken from the bottom We've got up just at least a little bit.
Oh no,
What are we-
I'm calling this one a great one. I really enjoyed this in the scope of Enterprise.
So what are we watching next week?
We're going with season 2, episode 13, Dawn. We see Trip. God, this Memory Alpha picture is not doing him any. This looks like me sitting with my shirt off. Suck it in, man. What are you doing? And there's what looked like a corpse laying behind him. Maybe that's some sort of a cantaloupe monster. No, here we go. This is straight out of the pages of Voyager. While in a shuttle pod performing tests, Tucker's attacked by hostile aliens and forced to crash land on a desolate moon. Directed by Roxanne Dawson.
You noticed.
If there's anybody who knows how to deal with a crashed shuttle pod episode, it's a Voyager alumni.
That's who you gotta give it to. That's who you gotta give it to.
And also, again, we've got Trip with his shirt off, so the sexy Roxanne rearing her head again.
And join Peter, myself, and of course, sexy Roxanne for more V'ger Please next week. See you then.
Disciple.